Well, that's a huge question, but let me try to simplify it if I can. Generally speaking, and these are great generalizations, films today especially are what we might call outdoor stories. Action stories, comedies like The Hangover that tend to be running around in cars and then in and out of one building or another. Stories for the big screen today tend to be, for want of a better phrase, outdoor stories that are appropriate to the big screen. Okay, television tends to be indoor stories, crime stories, intimate comedies in family settings or friendships or in the office like 30 Rock and so forth. They tend to be stories that are indoors. When you're writing for the big screen, when you're writing sort of outdoor stories, the emphasis is on physical action, on not just car crashes and all those cliches, but just generally things that happen out of doors, require very little dialogue relatively, and physical action of some kind. When you're writing for television, you're going to write a lot of dialogue, because it's going to be an indoor story. People are sitting in their offices or sitting in their homes or going into people's living rooms as a detective and interviewing them, taking down notes and so forth. And so you tend to write much more dialogue for TV than you would for the big screen. On the other hand, Hollywood and the big screen also makes indoor stories. You know, $1 Million Baby. Clint Eastwood's films, Gran Torino, and so forth, tend to be indoor stories. They tend to have a good bit of dialogue. 24 is an action show, of course, on television, as was Deadwood, had a lot of action. But then even in 24, you tend to get in offices, you tend to get in cars, and carry the story through dialogue. So the biggest difference, of course, between the big screen and the small screen is the amount of action on one hand versus dialogue on the other. So if you're going to create a television series, you got to kind of think indoors. What kinds of stories take place indoors? Courtroom dramas, hospital stories, cop stories. Those three have been the meat and potatoes of television for decades because they're all indoor stories. They happen in courtrooms, operating rooms, and cops sitting in a car on surveillance or whatever. So you want to think toward those genres that tend to be told primarily through dialogue. You have to think for television, of course, long form. You have to create a situation, set up characters and conflicts that can last 12 episodes, 20 episodes. I mean, how long did the Sopranos go on? 20 episodes a year, perhaps, for 10 years, 200 episodes. You have to think about a cast of characters and conflicts and struggles that can be not just 3 acts, 4 acts, 5 acts, but 50 acts, 100 acts, and you need subplots galore. You need a tremendous amount of material. So in setting up a TV series, you've got to have the potential that it can go on year after year after year, dozens and dozens of episodes into the future. And not every kind of situation, obviously, can be exploited dramatically and progressively over all those years and episodes.